Hello everybody, it's p-brane. I want to talk about action-reaction and as it relates to the supposed spinning of the Earth on its axis and the subsequent flattening of the poles and the equatorial bulge. Let's do a little background first. The Earth is said to be rotating once every 24 hours, and it's said to have a diameter of 8,000 miles and a radius of 4,000 miles with a 25,000 mile circumference. That would give the Earth a rim velocity or equatorial speed of about 1,000 miles per hour. And that 1,000 mile per hour equatorial speed is said to be bulging the Earth 14 miles high and flattening the poles, right? Gazillions of tons of dirt, water, and mud and everything, rock, all around the equator, 14 miles high. This is what they're saying is going on. And yet they're telling us we can't feel this at the surface. It's going on underneath us. There's a centrifugal force powerful enough to do that, and sustaining that, as it says here in Wikipedia. An equatorial bulge is due to the force exerted by its rotation, and it says the Earth is ductile, which means malleable, right? It's flexible. The Earth's equatorial bulge has been decreasing in step, there's the key, in step, with the decrease in the rate of rotation.
Okay, so why am I making a point of pointing out, saying that this is linked to the rotation? Because these spinning ball zombies will come back and say, oh no, p-brane, but the bulge occurred when the Earth was formed. It doesn't really have any impact on it now. That's what they tried to say every time I bring this up. So no, the bulge is inextricably linked to the rotational speed. I know, big word. How many syllables we got? Inextricably. Woo, I win. 5 syllables. And this is just common sense. There's a cause and effect. If a ball rotates or spins, if it's soft at all, it's going to warp. And it says the Earth is ductile, which means malleable, right? So it's going to warp. They know this. That's why they came up with the equatorial bulge, saying that the equator would bulge 14 miles. Somebody corrected me and said, p-brane, it's 27 miles. They were trying to make their case. No, it says 14 anyway, and the poles flatten. Well, this is their model. This is what they say it's doing. I just wanted to point that out because they would like to straw man you with that and come up with this, no, that's not what it is. It's not now. Well, it is now. And the fact that we see water, lakes and ponds in the ocean, especially in the early morning hours, you go out to the beach, the water's like glass. All right. And it's not moving to the equator. The water would have to move to the equator. That's just a law of rotation, physics on a water-covered ball. The water's got to move to the equator. And it doesn't. That's one great way we know when we see still water that the Earth's not rotating. Okay. So this is just another way they're gaslighting us, trying to tell us that all this rotation and orbiting of the Earth is going on, and the equator's bulging 14 miles and the poles are flattening, yet you can't feel it. It's kind of like, how do you know you have this super serious, dangerous virus? Well, when you don't feel sick, that tells you you're sick. It's more gaslighting, okay?
But yet we can't feel this at the surface. Okay, so I want to talk about the action and reaction as it relates to the Earth. Okay, so here you have a golf ball being hit. The golf ball is being flattened. You can think of that as the distortion or the disfiguring of the Earth due to the spin. Okay, so when the golf ball is flattened, that's the action. The reaction is the ball is going to take off at 150 miles per hour or whatever it is, right? So it can't crush that. You can't have that impact and say, well, the ball's just going to sit there on the tee. That's an impossibility. That can't happen. It can't happen because there's a reaction to the action. And it's the same as the spinning ball, Earth, right? It's spinning and it's flattening at the poles and bulging. And the bulging says that everything wants to fly out from center, right? And so all the water wants to rush to the equator and spin off the ball. That's what it wants to do. It can't do anything else. Let's take this tennis ball. The tennis ball gets hit. It gets completely flattened. Now, it's not logical and it's physically impossible that the ball is just going to sit there in its squashed, flattened state, okay, and not spring off at 100 miles per hour, whatever it is. Okay, same with this baseball. It's illogical and impossible for it to stay in that position. The reaction to the action of it being compressed is that it's going to take off. Okay, so now when it comes to a spinning object, clearly it's not being hit, but the centrifugal force, or whatever force you want to call it, is causing the ball, let's say we spin a ball, it's causing it to flatten at the poles and bulge at its equator. Okay, now the action is the spinning, the reaction is the flattening and the bulging. And the bulging is really no more than everything wanting to fly off, as you see in my spinning balloon and the spinning ball. The balloon has a skin, the ball doesn't. So it shows if there's water on the ball, it flies off. And I'll show you this clip right here. Immediately upon starting to spin, the water's starting to fly off. I'm standing on the earth, because they'll say, gravity, gravity. Well, I'm standing on the gravity ball right now, and the water's flying up. Now, before this water even flies up, it has to be rushing to the equator because it's flying off at the equator.
Something like this.
So this is a catastrophe, a cataclysmic, no life can exist on a spinning ball. I'll digress for a minute in that I'll just say this is how they've gaslighted us. The deceivers in this world, many, many years, 500 years ago, whatever it is, first convinced us that we live on a ball. Well, we all know common sense, you can't live on a ball. That's ridiculous. So they convinced us we lived on a ball, and it's a spinning ball. Okay, and so they came up with this equatorial bulge, about 14 miles high, and another thing they'll come out and say, oh, but it's not rotating, but once in 24 hours, look at the hour hand on a clock. Do you think you'd feel that? And, okay, stop saying that. They're still saying that. Stop saying it, because they did not come up with the bulge based on the rotational period. They came up with the bulge based on the rim velocity of the rotating ball Earth, which is 1,000 miles per hour. Okay, but where they made their mistake, and yes, these brilliant scientists and physicists in the past, well, they made a mistake because they're trying to support a lie. The spinning ball is a hoax. It's not true. So as detectives, we look at that and we find holes in the case. Well, this is a huge hole that shows that it cannot be spinning, because you would have water, as I show here with the balloon and the ball. Water's flying off. Uh-oh, whoops, the Earth has water on it. Okay, so you can't have it spinning and not have the water be disturbed and flung all over the place. That's the action-reaction. The action is spinning a ball. The reaction is flattening the poles, and everything wants to leave the center of rotation. Everything wants to fly out at the equator. It'll move to the equator and fly out. That's what it's going to do. Okay? So this is a scam. It's a hoax. It never happened. You cannot have a scene like this with still water, and we have this at all latitudes on the Earth, or this one, unless the Earth is completely still. Rotation causes a disfiguring to whatever rotates. Now, and I'm not saying this is what the scientists came up with. 14-mile high bulge around the Earth and the flattening of the poles. Can't be. But they know darn well that a ball rotating at a surface speed or the rim velocity of 1,000 miles per hour will disfigure. They know that.
Again, and the water, which would be the most easily disturbed, the most easily moved, would have to be rushing to the equator from both north and south on this spinning ball. If the ground has moved to the equator and has bulged upward 14 miles high, the water has to. I mean, this is common sense. This is the physics of a spinning ball with water on it. Okay, so here's the gaslighting right here. This would be like showing that fish tank doing this. The water remaining completely still, even though it's rotating faster and faster. Well, imagine if you took children and you never showed them, and you kept them in a classroom, in a room, and you never let them out, and you showed them this fish tank, and you didn't let them touch it, but you just show them this video, and you say, this is how water behaves in this rotating tank. This is the world you live in. See, you live in a fish tank. And then you show people, you make a fake, put a rubber ducky in there and some toys floating on some things and little figurines, and nobody falls off and nobody gets disturbed. And you teach them, this is the way it is. This is how it is on your Earth. Well, you've gaslighted them. That's like telling us we live on a ball, a spinning ball, and yet we can't feel it. But yet we say the reason we can't feel it is because we're on a spinning ball. That's the mentality. They say, "Whoa, could you feel it in an airplane, p-brane?" Well, it's not the same. An airplane's going straight. Put an airplane into a turn that's tight enough to warp the airplane to make it flatten its roof and floor and make the sides bulge out. Yeah, you'd feel that. You'd be pressed against the wall. All the liquid, all the water inside the plane would be against the wall. So, yeah, no. This is a fake. This is how they gaslighted us, telling us that we live on this ball. And why would they do that, p-brane? Well, besides money, love of money is root of all evil. There's power, but is also to make the Bible look stupid and to look foolish. This is the Antichrist, the Antichrists in our world who control the world, and this is what they do. This is fake, friends. Now, whether you choose to accept that is up to you, but they've successfully got us all to believe this nonsense. But this is physically impossible, that we live on this spinning ball and the water is not moving to the equator, even though the dirt and the ground is moving to the equator and bulging upward 14 miles high and the poles are flattening. This is not possible, folks.
But they didn't count on people looking into it. They didn't count on people going, sorry, this is busted. We don't believe it anymore. We believed it at one time, but we don't believe it. And we know that the only reason you came up with this cockamamie story was to gaslight us. And gaslighting, what that is trickery. It's the narcissists do, Satanists, and they trick you, and now you no longer can trust your senses because they're telling you walking around on a ball, and there are people on the other side of the ball from you that are upside down. That's gaslight number one. Gaslight number two is that it's rotating and spinning, and you can't feel it. You no longer can trust your senses, and you have to look to them, the high priests, to tell me what the reality is. Okay? The earth cannot rotate. The blue marble, which is turning black and decaying, is trying to get out of the coffin, so I'm shoving it back in and got to put a few more nails in the coffin. I've showed with the baseball, the golf ball, the tennis ball, that once you compress it, it wants to spring out. That's the action-reaction. With a spinning object, it's the flattening. You spin it is the action. The flattening and the bulging is the reaction. And the water would want to fly off of the ball. That's just how it is. Okay, now you couple that with the orbit that they say we're doing. Okay, so remember, it's the rim velocity that causes the bulge of the Earth, 1,000 miles per hour. Well, the Earth rotating around the sun is also a large rotation at 66,000 mile per hour rim speed for the Earth. It's actually more because when it's rotating in the orbital direction, that part of the Earth, you'd add 1,000 miles per hour speed. And then when that part of the Earth rotates around to the inside and it's rotating against the orbital direction, you subtract 1,000. So you'd have a 2,000 mile per hour fluctuation in rim velocity for the Earth at different, separate halves of the Earth every 12 hours. Again, devastating. The Earth would explode. It'd blow apart. So this fantasy, this hoax is finally being exposed. It can't happen. It's done. So if you have spin and a bulge and flattening the poles, then you have to have this. But since we see this, the Earth's not spinning. I rest my case. We live on an immovable, stationary plane. All right. Thank you so much for watching. There's only one thing left to do. Let's kick the ball out of here. Take care.
The earth is flat.